Hey guys, welcome back to I'm Just a Fan. It's your host, Ben. And today we're going to be talking about which free agents should the Philadelphia Eagles bring back in the 2025 season. Let's talk about it. So, to preface, just going into this, I'm not going to dive into every single free agent. I'm just not. There's a couple guys that really it's just not relevant for me to talk about, and I don't think any of you care about that stuff. But I'm going to hit on some of the heavy hitters for the most part and a few guys that, I think are worth discussing. But it's just kind of going to be a list of, should he stay? Should he not stay? Should we bring him back? And obviously, I'm going to be taking the cap into account. This is not an unrealistic video. I'm not trying to do that. Of course, I'd like to bring a lot of these guys back, but realistically, the Eagles have only a certain amount of money that they're going to be able to spend, and they're going to have to be careful about that. So, I'm going to try to make this video realistic as possible. And yeah, let's start the list. First, the guy that's going to be commanding the most money heading into this offseason for the Birds, Josh Sweat. Now, again, emotionally, I would love to bring back Josh Sweat. As a proud member of the Josh Sweat fan club, I would love for him to be back. But at the same time, realistically, I just don't see the Eagles bringing him back, and there's a few reasons for that. Number one, he's going to command a solid amount of money, specifically coming off of that Super Bowl performance, 2.5 sacks. He got himself a bag. And I think there's just going to be a few teams out there that are going to be willing to bid more than the Eagles are. Number two, the Eagles have pretty good depth there. I'm not saying it's perfect, but you at least have Nolan Smith. Yes, Bryce Huff is there, even though he's a non-factor at this point. But you also have the emergence of Jalex Hunt, who has been very, very good recently. He's continued to get better throughout the entire season, so I think the Eagles are really going to be high on him like they were last year, taking him in the third round, and I think they're really going to try to trust him heading into 2025, so I think they're going to move on from Sweat. It sucks. He's been an Eagle since 18. I wasn't in love with the pick at the time, but I've loved seeing him develop from a third-round pick. It was third or fourth round pick, and he's progressively just gotten better every single year. And he made 2 Super Bowl appearances with this team, and he won a Super Bowl with this team. So obviously, I have a soft spot for Sweat, but I don't think he's coming back to Philly. Brandon Graham, I'm only putting him on this list just because he hasn't technically announced he's going to retire. I assume BG's retiring, so I don't see BG coming back. Just wanted to talk about him for the 2 seconds that I need to. But let's move on to the next guys. Next, Zach Bond. In my opinion, the most important free agent on this list. And there's numerous reasons for that. The Eagles absolutely got a steal signing Zach Bond last year. He was supposed to just be a special teamer. He ended up becoming a starter. He beat out Devin White in camp. And boy, oh boy, did he become a player. I mean, he was borderline defensive player of the year in his first year in the Vic Fangio scheme. I think the Eagles got to pay this guy. He's the best linebacker they've had. Oh my gosh, I mean, in years, it's been years since they've had a linebacker this good. And I also think it's just very key to bring him back, especially now that Nakobe Dean, he injured that knee in the first wild card week. I just think that, you got to bring back Zach Bond just because you're down Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean may not even play in the first couple weeks of the season. I think you have to bring back Zach Bond, number one, because it's a position of need. And number two, you can't let a guy this good just leave. He just is way too good. And I think it's worth paying him that amount of money. I think he's going to be commanding around 3 years, maybe $40 million. In my opinion, yes, I know it's a lot for that position, but I think they need to. I think they need to pay him. So please get it done. He's the number one priority for me heading into March. Next is Mekhi Becton. I would love to see Mekhi Becton back in Philly. Personally, I thought he was a really good player for the Eagles this year. They moved him to right guard, and he didn't miss a beat. In my opinion, he had his best season ever. Now, obviously, he's surrounded by also a ton of talent on that team. But at the same time, you got to give him credit, and you got to give Jeff Stoutland credit for getting this guy coached up. He leaves a terrible situation in New York. It's just football hell, borderline. And he comes to arguably the best offensive line in the last 15, 20 years. And he makes an impact. And man, I just love what he brings to this team. He's not very old either. He's only 26. Yeah, he's only 26. So I think he's a guy worth investing in, just again for the depth. Also, there have been some rumblings that he's going to potentially take not necessarily a team-friendly deal, but he's really potentially leaning on coming back to Philly. I'm not sure how much he's going to command going into free agency, but if the Eagles can get him for a decent price, I'd be willing to bring him back. It just really helps out that offensive line. Not that there's too many weaknesses, if any, but I just think bringing him back would be a lot for that core. That core seems very close, and Saquon loves those guys as well. I just think it would be great to bring back Becton. Next is longtime Eagle Avonte Maddox, been on the team since 2018. Sadly, he's slowly just declined every year. It's mostly been injuries, but it sucks. But I just don't think the Eagles should bring him back. He did a great job in the Super Bowl playing his role, especially with that pass breakup on that fourth down. And he did a good job, even just not complaining this year. He was a solid vet for that room. Was great depth. Even played a little bit of safety this year, but. For me personally, I just don't think it's worth bringing him back. He's so injury prone. I'm just glad he got to go out on top. If that was his last game with the Eagles, I'm glad he got to get a Super Bowl. So yeah, still love Avonte. It's nothing personal. It's just I think the Eagles should move in a different direction. They have a lot of young talent there at that position, and I just don't think I don't think it realistically makes sense to bring him back. Next is Milton Williams. I love Milton Williams. He was a great player, drafted, I think, in the 2021 draft. And he's just been a sleeper, honestly, for this Eagles team the last couple years. And it really hasn't been his fault. He's just been surrounded by so much talent. In 2021, 2022, he was with Hargrave and Fletcher Cox. Obviously, he wasn't going to get as many snaps, but he still made an impact when he came in the game. And again, as these years have transitioned, he was again behind those guys, Jordan Davis, then behind Carter. So, he's made a lot of the snaps that he's been given. And again, he had a great performance in the Super Bowl. He had a really good year this year as well. I just don't think the Eagles bring him back because, again, you have depth there. You have depth there at that position with Rojo. I'm going to butcher that name, but you also have, of course, Davis and Carter. I just don't know if it makes sense to really sign him. I would like to bring him back, of course, but he's going to command a lot of money, and I just don't think the Eagles realistically can spend that much money on a position that isn't necessarily a full-on need compared to other parts of the team. So he's probably going to walk, and it sucks. But again, he won a Super Bowl with the Birds. Forever love Milton. He's a sleeper, and I'm just glad he's getting his bag. Next is Oren Burks. Oren Burks didn't play a ton this year, but he came in occasionally and was mostly a special teamer. But man, did he make his name known in the playoffs. Starts off the playoffs on the first play in the Green Bay game, lights up the returner for the Packers, forces a fumble, gets the Eagles the ball, and they score on that drive. He then steps in for Nakobe Dean in the playoffs, and you don't even notice it, honestly. It was to the point where he was that good. He played really, really good football. He played great in the Rams game, played great in the Commanders game, and I thought he made some plays even in the Chiefs game. So I thought he was really good. I don't think he's going to command too much money. In my opinion, again, it's similar to why you would want to re-sign Zach Bond. Nakobe Dean's hurt, and potentially if Bond does leave for some reason, you're going to need depth there, and it's a guy that has been battle-tested. He's been in the last 2 Super Bowls. Seems to have a good relationship with the team, so yeah, I definitely bring back Oren Burks 100%. Next is Isaiah Rodgers. This one's an interesting one. I would like what Isaiah Rodgers brought to the team. Again, you didn't really pay him a ton last year. I'm not saying he's the greatest cornerback ever, but I think for the depth, I think he's a solid piece. I just don't know how much he's really going to command on the market. If it's affordable, I would bring him back. If it's not, of course, go in another direction. But with potentially losing Slay, and we'll talk about that soon, I think it's a guy that's worth investing in if the price is right. Kenny G. I am mixed on this one. I would like to bring back Kenny Gainwell. Personally, I am a Kenny G guy. I'm not saying he's the best running back ever. But how many times over the last couple of years have you seen Kenneth Gainwell get a huge first down in a crucial situation, whether it's through the passing game, a long 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 run, and he ends up juking a guy or two for a nice gain of 11 or 12. He made a lot of those plays, specifically in the playoffs. He made some of those plays, and I just think Kenny G is a really versatile back. Again, I just don't know if the Eagles are going to pay him because, again, he's a running back. You're already paying decent money to Saquon, and you also just drafted Shipley, who showed some flashes at the end of the season. So I'm not sure if that's what the Eagles want to do, but again, if he wants to take a decent deal, why not bring him back? I wouldn't hate it. He's a solid RB2, and he really likes playing for the Eagles. So we'll see what he wants to do, see what the Eagles want to do. Just really depends on his price. But again, if his price is right, I bring him back. Though he's not a free agent this year, I am putting Darius Slay in this list just because he's talked about it himself. He knows, though he has 1 year left on his deal, he's going to be getting paid a lot, so there's potential he does get cut. And it's a mixed one because he's only going to play one more season, and I try not to really lean on the emotional side of sports in general when it comes to these decisions, but I felt like Slay played pretty good football last year. He had a really big bounce back year compared to his 2023 season. I didn't love what he gave us in the 2023 season, but I just feel like if, again, depending on how much he wants to make, if they do end up cutting him, because I know he wants to get that bag, I would bring back Slay just because, again, he has a great relationship with DeJean and Quinion. He's mentored them the last year. He's not playing bad football at all. He played very good football. And I just think that he's a potential guy, again, one of those, he's a captain. He's one of those guys in the locker room that really brings it every single week. And I would not mind bringing back Slay if he is willing to take a pay cut. Realistically, though, I do think that was probably Slay's last game with the Eagles just because, again, he's going to be getting a lot of money next year, and I think the Eagles probably do cut him. But if they find a way to bring him back, I would absolutely love it. I love Slay. Slay was he's one of the best, if not the best, Eagles corner I've seen in my lifetime. You know, I didn't grow up watching a lot of good corners. I've suffered through Bradley Fletcher, Cary Williams, Brandon Maxwell. I know there's other ones out there. I said Fletcher. I could go on and on. That's not what this video is about, but still love Slay. If he's willing to come back at the right price, if they do cut him, I'd bring him back. And last is Britton Covey. Most people probably didn't think he'd be on this list. I think Britton Covey, if you can get him for cheap, which I don't think he's going to command a lot of money on the market, I think it's worth bringing him back. And my main reason for this is I don't want Cooper DeJean returning punts anymore. I know it's cool, and I do love doing the Coop chant when you're at the game, but I just don't want one of our potential long-term corners to be returning punts on a consistent basis. I would rather save that for Covey, a guy that's proven that he can be a good returner. He's one of the best returners, I think, in 22 or 23. He just was hurt this year. And I think it's personally worth the investment if the Eagles don't have to pay too much money. The only reason I would really lean against doing it is there's just a bunch of other receivers on this team that are more valuable in the receiving game than Covey is. But I think Covey has a very good role as a special teamer. And again, if they don't have to overpay for him, which, he's not going to be commanding a ton of money anyways, I don't see why you don't bring him back. So, I would bring back Britton Covey. But yeah, that's all I got for this one. Just talking about the free agents. Of course, we will be getting into more stuff. But just curious on, again, Eagles fans, what do you guys want to do this year in free agency? Do you want to bring some of these guys back? Do you want to, go in a completely different direction? Please let me know. I'm curious. This is just my list. This is how I feel about these players. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. And if you made it to this point in the video, I'd really, really appreciate if you give this video a like. Again, drop down your thoughts in the comments. And if you like this type of content, subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.